some young people who want to get married say they don't feel financially secure enough to do so. What's wrong with just being poor together? What makes you happy are people, your relationships with people. If those are good, you're a rich person. Yeah, sure, you need a minimum of money to pay bills, but beyond that, I don't know.
Like the famous rapper Mace said, right? Mo money, mo problems. So
exactly. Hey everybody, what's happening? Welcome to the I Just Want This Done Divorce Podcast, where we blast a little Queen at the beginning, get you fired up. For those of you who are fans of the greatest movie ever made, Flash Gordon, Queen did the entire soundtrack. If you've never heard the full wedding march, it's phenomenal. It's the most cheese-tastic adventure sci-fi movie ever with Max von Sydow. People probably of this generation are like, who the hell's that? But we're rocking and rolling. I've got my new logo item, quarter zip. We've got swag now at STG Divorce Law. So rocking and rolling with episode 42 of the I Just Want This Done Divorce Podcast. I'm your host, Raiford Palmer, and with me, as always, Rahul Iyer. And we are here to bring you some great stuff, wealthy people's divorces and how they apply to you, what you can learn from these cases, and demystifying what the press gets wrong so often about divorce and prenups and marriage. And then we've got some great articles to talk about today and topics, and then some real good legal questions where we will discuss the questions and give answers, which should help you find some analog in your personal situation. And then we've got a dating app story because we just love the dating app stories and we can't stop. So we've got another one. Can't stop, won't stop. With that said, let's get started. And first, we're talking about Tori Spelling's divorce. So I was not aware, Rahul wasn't aware either, that Tori Spelling was in the middle of a divorce. Apparently, it's taken a couple of years. So as we typically see, and we talked about in the show, Rahul, these folks did this stuff under wraps largely. And then it's like, lo and behold, or ta-da, there's a settlement. And the press acts surprised. And the truth is, they've probably been just negotiating this stuff privately behind the scenes for a long time, exchanging information, getting all this done, and then bam, they get divorced. And then everybody acts surprised about it. So let's talk about this story. This is from E! News. Tori Spelling requests spousal support from Dean McDermott in finalized divorce agreement is the headline. Olivia Evans. This is a very recent story from a couple days ago. Okay. So in this story, 2 years after Tori Spelling and Dean McDermott broke up, divorce proceedings are coming to an end with the Beverly Hills 90210 actress making a request for spousal support. Now, the interesting thing about this is one of the documents that surfaced that were filed in this case, this public record, is Mr. McDermott's financial affidavit, where he basically makes jack. Because we pulled the record ourselves, because we are intrepid investigators, and we weren't satisfied with just the press telling us. So we pulled this thing up ourselves, and they're basically some semi-generic forms they filed stating they were filing an uncontested divorce. And he reports that his income is, I don't know, $3,000 or $4,000 a month. It's not much. So it's interesting because Miss Spelling requested child support and spousal support. And what's interesting is I'm not entirely clear on how this works because if they're divorced, I'm not sure why she's asking for support afterwards. So I'm not entirely clear on the process. We're not California divorce lawyers. One interesting thing I do know that we haven't talked about, Rahul, is the use of private divorce judges in California.
Not in any sort of level of detail. I think we previously, during those Kevin Costner pods, I think we discussed how they used them, but we never went into it.
So I wasn't really familiar with how this worked, but when I went to speak in front of the Collaborative Practice California folks, they had a weekend symposium, really awesome event with like 120 divorce attorneys, financial neutrals, and divorce coaches. By the way, Bill Eddy, Woody Mostyn, or Forrest Mostyn were there, probably at the top of the heap of the uncontested divorce experts. And they have published books. They speak about these issues. And I spoke at a keynote on Friday night. But I was talking to some of the lawyers and learning about this private judge thing briefly. Just to briefly explain, their court system is so screwed up in parts of California that includes around San Francisco and LA. It's so overloaded, sort of similar to Cook County taking 3 to 5 years to get to a trial, that they hire these private divorce judges who are typically retired judges who did divorce work, and they pay them by the hour to be a judge. And actually they do anything from what we would consider an arbitration. They might use them for helping them negotiate and do what we kind of call pretrial conferences where they make settlement recommendations, but they actually do private trials, which I was not aware of. So they do discovery. They have motion practice and private trials before these judges, which it's a couple things. Unfortunately, it's a 2-track system where this one system is really only available to the wealthy. And it shows how messed up the public system is, that people are willing to spend money on actual judges for this parallel track system that's kind of a fast pass through your divorce, but they're going through litigation. I was surprised. I didn't know it was that extensive. They said, oh yeah, this happens all the time in these high income cases. And lots of people are known as, judges who will do this work, and you pay them for this and they do it. And I said, and so this is all legal and legit? And they said, yeah, not only do they do that, but this will maybe interest the divorce lawyers who are listening. They actually approve like marital settlement agreements or prove up packages. So when people get divorced in our area, we can file up the paperwork and courts can approve it remotely. And they do this typically within a few days. They'll read over everything and say, yeah, this is okay. And they'll approve it and you'll get the judgment entered. Their system is so slow. I was talking to somebody about the counties around San Francisco that even those are backed up like weeks and more than that because they have one judge approving a giant pile of these things. So they have private judges approving their prove-ups. We call them prove-ups, a settled case, which is wild. And then the court accepts that this private judge signed off on it. Just interesting. So in any event, I'm guessing they've had a private judge or something, or I'm not sure what they did, but they negotiated this thing privately. But the thing I'm not sure about is I don't think the press quite has the status of this case right, because it says that she's asking for child support, that support should be ordered following approval of their mutual dissolution. She's also requesting attorney's fees. And McDermott filed a financial document that I don't have handy, but I read over it. And it said that he made a few $1,000s a month. And it noted that Ms. Spelling makes anywhere from $3,000 to $75,000 per month, depending on the job. So he's basically saying, I don't have any money. He's a drug and alcohol counselor of some kind, according to the job description in his document he filed. This is in the article. He's 58. He estimated his earnings are $3,800 as an alcohol and drug counselor. He has a girlfriend named Lily Kalo. Says she earns $600 a month. Said she doesn't contribute to expenses. Okay, I don't know how much she could contribute at $600 a month. He alleged he's in a plethora of debt. I've never heard the use of plethora. Isn't a plethora like several, like many, but not a lot? You know what I'm saying?
I think it's trying to use a big word.
Yeah, right. They pulled up the wrong synonym, I think. He owes credit card debt and a loan and all that. And Tori has custody of the couple's kids, and they have 5 children. He has visitation. She has the kids 90% of the time. So it's interesting. More to come as we get more information. But the financial information was pretty interesting because we mentioned that detail. Yeah, $3,800 a month. He managed to land Tori Spelling somehow. I don't know how that happened. So good for her. And I don't know. There's got to be family money for her, I would guess. This is just speculation on my part because her father was famous producer, the late Aaron Spelling. Now moving on to rich people. Tell us about this property tycoon story. This ties into these stories we talk to you about occasionally with like the Russian oligarchs that somehow end up getting divorced in England and that kind of thing. What's the scoop on this one?
Yeah, this is about billionaire Michael Fuchs. He's a property tycoon who once held stake in Manhattan's iconic Chrysler building. And so him and his wife, Alvina Collardo-Fuchs, they have had a 5-year legal battle where from this divorce settlement that the two of them had. And most recently, he was ordered to sell this 48 million USD London mansion after failing to pay alimony, it says, or spousal maintenance, as we call it here in Illinois. And so in 2022, a London judge ruled that she was entitled to over 28 million pounds in assets and money. And that same year, the High Court ordered him to pay her an annual sum exceeding 3.6 million pounds. And that despite these rulings, he allegedly failed to meet his financial obligations and was accused of attempting to hide assets, including through this sort of quote-unquote sham tenancy agreement that he had with some real property. And so Judge Justice Poole, as they say, who presided over the latest ruling, criticized him for his evasive behavior and said that, look, you haven't done it before, so we have no confidence that you would actually comply with future orders voluntarily. He said he's selling the house, the 6-story house where she and the 2 kids live, and that she would get the money from that.
Okay.
And there's also 2 other properties they own. And, prior to the divorce, they had this opulent lifestyle with homes in the Hamptons, Paris, London, a vast art collection.
Wow.
3 Picassos worth millions.
And it mentions there was a prenup, but of course we don't know what the terms were. Obviously, She gets something because the judge is ordering a substantial amount of money for her this is something we see in cases sometimes where if somebody's sort of misbehaving, the court can do unusual things like order liquidation of various assets to satisfy a divorce judgment, or create what they call a constructive trust, which is sort of a legal wall around an asset or group of assets to protect them for children or for a spouse. So the court was probably frustrated and said, well, this is one asset I can tap. I'm going to grab this and liquidate this and at least get the wife some money here. So,
and it's possible that they did follow the terms of the prenup. We don't know. We can look into that a little bit more. And that, it's one thing to have a prenup that says you'll do something, and it's another thing to actually do it. So even if this follows the prenup is just means to an end. He'll still have to physically remit the funds, which if he allegedly is not doing, then he'll have to get recourse through the legal system.
This makes me think of a couple things. One is getting a judgment's one thing. That's difficult enough. Enforcing it can be challenging too, especially against somebody who's a squirrel. So when I say squirrel, I mean somebody who's evasive and they're trying to, being squirrely. This can be a real big challenge for people to actually collect on these judgments. So it's one thing to get the piece of paper that says you're supposed to get X, Y, and Z, and it's from the court, the judgment. The next trick is getting X, Y, and Z from people that are recalcitrant or they want to hide things and stuff like that. So this is an example of somebody trying to play games, and the judge caught up with them and said, okay, how are we going to sell this asset? For some people, they have so much money and they figure, hey, I've got assets all over the place. I'll just keep playing this game as long as I can and drag this out as far as possible, unfortunately. So tying into affluence and marriage, we've got a timely story from the Wall Street Journal that actually has been kicking around we have our sort of stack of stuff. We have a pile of stories that we think will be interesting, and we just couldn't figure where to fit this in, but it came in timely here. This is an interesting story from Wall Street Journal by Rachel Wolf. The headline is, Why Marriage is Increasingly for the Affluent. Links to all the stories, of course, in the show notes, as always. And she says that the opening line is, this is a quote, before there was love, there was money. For centuries, the institution of marriage functioned as more of an economic contract than a romantic one. The process of a better shot at achieving financial success and stability as a couple. And what's really interesting, Rahul, is you probably remember, Rahul, from law school when we were in property class, and your professor tends to talk about a little bit of the history of marriage, and because they talk about estates and land and future interests, which is a real fun topic for any lawyers here are chuckling as I say this. Statutes of Anne, anyone, fee tail, these things I won't even get into. But when you talk about real estate and you look at the origins of marriage statutes, when you dig back into the history of marriage, it's largely a business arrangement. And families would arrange marriages because, and this goes back to like royalty too, you're joining people with land holdings or financial holdings to make a larger, stronger family. And in an agrarian economy, land is wealth. And it still is, but even more so when simple quantity of land and quality equals wealth. So the more holdings you have, the more powerful you are. So what's really interesting when you go back to if you look at old Illinois law, go back to the 1800s, because our state goes back all the way to 1818. It looks very primitive now, but the concept of marriage was really a financial arrangement. The state was interested in two things. Marriage was really legally provided to really promote the raising of children because we needed more children to be workers and grow our country. So making babies was a plus, and having them under the auspices of a marriage was also a plus. And then, of course, we have the Judeo-Christian traditions of our law without boring people too much. We come out of those religious traditions, so there's the religious component as well. But it's really interesting to look at the financial origins of the law and things like the homestead exemption, which protected a wife in Illinois from, you couldn't sell a house out from under your wife. Even though you were the only one on title, you had to get your wife's consent. And it is wife back then when you look at the statute. So I'm not trying to misgender or anything, but you had to give permission in writing to sell the family home, what we call the homestead. And you still have to do that today. The concern being you're literally selling the home out from under your family without them knowing and, making somebody destitute. And when we look at the law of legal separation in Illinois, which is not a divorce, even a half divorce, but it's a remedy to get child support and alimony and to arrange for custody and visitation, even if you're not getting a divorce. Why is that? Because in the old days, women didn't work and they had no access to money. And if the husband cut them off and they were just sitting there in the house, like starving, or the husband abandoned them, they had no remedy. And you had to prove fault back in those days to get a divorce. But I digress. But the origins are really, really interesting because they're so like property centric. And that's what it's talking about here was, and then in more recent times, like my parents got married when they were my mom was like, 19, 20 years old. My dad was 22. People got married young because they had no money and they figured, well, we might as well team up and be together and share expenses and, struggle through this together. Well, this article talks about how financial security is no longer a goal reached after marriage. And people say, let's get married. We'll get together, team up. And my ex-wife and I did this. We didn't have any money. We got together. We made it through school. We got jobs, bought a house together and struggled and climbed up over time. But now it says no longer a goal reached after marriage, younger Americans say, but rather a prerequisite for it. Now you need to have money to get married. Before it was, let's get married because we'll be better off if we're together.
Build a life together.
Right. And it's interesting because people are increasingly getting married in their 30s. As Rahul and I've told you now many times, we watch these marriage trends and the marriage rate is generally dropping, but it's staying more steady for higher, more affluent, more educated people. People are getting married more often in their late 20s, early 30s rather than their early 20s. Folks used to always get married like between 21 and 25 years old. That was very common. And now it's shifted to early 30s. They quote a couple people as examples. And then a sociology professor they interviewed said, you achieve a measure of success educationally and professionally before you put a ring on it. That's his name is Brad Wilcox. It's a mindset shift driving up the age people are getting married or they're less likely to get married. So the median age as of last year was 30 for men and 29 for women, the article says. And that's up from 28 for men and 26 for women in 2008. So that's a pretty big shift. The problem, researchers say, is a capstone view of marriage raises the bar for what people think their lives need to look like before they get married. Rahul, what do you think about this? The idea that we must accomplish X, Y, and Z before we get married, or let's say before we have children, fill in the blanks. But so you have friends that have gotten married and stuff like that. And
sure,
you've recently kind of come through that time period in your life. You've been married for several years. When around that time, did friends of yours say, hey, I got to make X, Y, and Z money and check off X, Y, Z boxes before I marry anybody?
That's very, very interesting question. I feel like that's, like the article suggests, probably a very more recent phenomenon.
Okay.
I got married in the mid 2010, so like around 2015. And so it's one of those where, my cohort, we were all just graduating from law school. No one had really anything. You might have had job offers, but no real money. You're coming out of school. People probably had debt and they were getting married to start this sort of journey together where they were going to either be lawyers and corporate professionals or whatever the case might be. It's been a real shift recently, though, where I've also noticed that people say, I got to get everything set and squared away.
Right.
And that's almost like a test now in the dating world, which is, who is this person? What is the value that they're adding to my relationship? What am I getting from being with this person? Or are they going to be dead weight or baggage I'm going to have to carry?
There's a transactional nature of these marriages that people aren't marrying just like for romantic notions. We're almost going back to the future with people thinking of this as a business transaction to some extent rather than just rather than a romantic one. But I've heard this whole thing about we're not ready to have kids, somebody will say. So why is that? Oh, we don't have enough money. I had Jack when we had our kid. We had very little when we had children. You just work it out. Yeah. And one thing that I've said many times that I learned from my dad is there's never a good time for anything. If you wait for the right time, it's never going to be a right time. You'll always find another reason that it isn't the right time. And if you wait for the right time for marriage, it could pass you by. If you wait for the perfect time to have a baby, that pass you by, or a dog, or whatever it is. And that's something that rings true to me as I've lived my life over time. And but it's interesting. People are trying to set up this perfect situation to get married. So it says, the marriage rates dropped. We've talked about these kind of stats before, but it is true that people are waiting until they get married when they're older. And marriage rates have declined much less for 22 to 45-year-olds with a bachelor's degree than those for less than a college education. And that one person says here, marriage has become a status symbol. It's kind of interesting. This is a quote. People don't want to get married until they have an education, have the job that can support them, they can afford a house, and they're looking for a partner that ticks all the boxes. And, these are a lot of tough criteria. You're probably not going to find everything in that person. Some young people who want to get married say they don't feel financially secure enough to do so, and they interview some people. But the point is, what's wrong with just being poor together? And here's another thing that I've learned in life is I've been happy without money and I've been happy with money, meaning I haven't noticed any net increase in my general happiness based on having assets and bigger bills to pay or whatever, and having a 401k than I did when I had none of that. I don't generally have a happier day where I'm clicking my heels, jumping in the air for joy all the time because I have a bunch of money in my 401k now that I didn't have. It's nice. It's a certain comfort level, but generally, no. What makes you happy are people and your relationships with people. If those are good, you're a rich person. Yeah, sure, you need money, a minimum of money to pay bills, but beyond that, I don't know. They've done that research, like how much does it really take? And they say beyond X amount of money, you're net no better off. You're just a bigger house. It's a bigger boat. It's all the net. It's the same thing basically. And because your needs are met, right?
And your lifestyle creeps up, right? That's the other thing is you'll get lifestyle creep. And it's like, like the famous rapper Mace said, right? Mo money, mo problems. So
exactly.
Yeah.
So, but it's really true. It's like, okay, you're eating at a fancier restaurant. You spend more money. You have a nicer car, but you're not any happier. You're really not. Anyway, I digress. But this article is interesting. So I think you see also a lot of people deferring their way out of marrying people at maybe a good time in their lives, meaning they wait so long that they're going to be much older when they have children and stuff like that. And the other issue that happens is if you have this fun-free life for 10, 15 years and you want to get married when you're 35 and stuff like that, boy, are your wings going to be clipped. I got married so young, I didn't know any different. It was a plus for me. And I got married right when I graduated college. I moved in with my then wife into our new apartment and kind of very traditional way almost. And it was great. We worked hard and built things together over time. But I didn't have like a fun freestyle 20s, where I'm going to bars and dating girls and all this stuff. And it was fine. I had a good time. We enjoyed ourselves. And we had kids pretty young. So I don't know what it would be like if I was like 35 or late 30s or 40, and now I'm supposed to get married and settle down and have kids. That's got to be a real mind twister.
Oh, yeah.
And then another interesting thing is women's relative economic position has changed. Women are graduating college in larger numbers. They're making more money. And I think that may have something to do with this equation too. This guy has a think tank called the Institute for Boys and Men at the American Institute, he says, in the past, men didn't have to clear such a high bar because they had the ultimate ticket of, well, I'm the breadwinner. I'm paying the bills. Well, that's no longer the case or as much. It's very, very interesting. That's what the story said. You can check it out. The link's in the description. But anyway, let's move on here. We've got to do some legal questions from our audience. Before we do the questions, let's have a moment from our sponsors. My name is Raiford Palmer. I'm the author of I Just Want This Done, How Smart, Successful People Get Divorced. There's a book behind me. Without losing their kids' money and minds, available on Amazon, Kindle, Audible, and where all great ebooks are sold. It's the book on divorce. It's a bestseller 4 years running, sold thousands and thousands of copies. I'm going to work on the updated version, but that's going to take probably a year because I have to release my next book first. I spill all the tea. I talk about why the divorce industry is the way it is, how you can break the pattern, how you can understand cost-benefit analysis, why the system is the way it is, and how you can deal with it, how you can address it best and save yourself, your kids' money, and your mind. Okay, we work at STG Divorce Law, a premier divorce law firm in Chicago, also in the suburbs. Just opened a Lake Forest office for you folks up in the Lake County area. We got you covered. We're at stglawfirm.com. We help smart, successful people get divorced better. So check us out at the website. We're also all over social media. We're easy to find at STG Divorce Law. Also, I'm available at Raiford Palmer on TikTok, X, and Instagram, and we post stuff constantly. Also, our STG Divorce Law YouTube channel is loaded with free educational content that we add to constantly with both shorts and long form content. And also all the past episodes of the I Just Want This Done Divorce podcast on our podcast channel. And you can check out our podcast website at ijustwantthisdonepodcast.com. Okay. Rahul, we got to tell everybody where you can be found on social.
You can find me at Chicago Divorce on Instagram and on LinkedIn.
Thank you very much. So check out Rahul there too and connect with him. We like to create a network of professionals across the country. If you are a divorce lawyer, financial professional, somebody an affiliated professional like mental health, please reach out to us. We'd like to add you to our list across the country and in Canada. We make referrals all the time. We want to know people that agree with our philosophy that we like an intentional approach to divorce, not going to World War III instantly. We were talking about this before the show, and I said, we're not sharks. People say, I want a shark divorce lawyer. I want an aggressive lawyer. I said, we're like a bear or a Labrador. We do our thing. We're nice to deal with. But the minute you put us on, we have to get to fight mode, we will attack and we'll work hard and fight for our clients as hard as we have to. Mm-hmm. And we're as good as anybody in this game. We've been doing it a long time. Our firm's been around for over 30 years. I've been a lawyer for over 30 years, and I've been a divorce lawyer for 25 or so. Rahul's been in this business a very long time, and all of our lawyers are very experienced. So all we do is divorce and family law in the Chicagoland area, and we take good care of our clients. You can just check out our reviews to see that. We constantly win awards from the reputable organizations like Best Lawyers, and several of our lawyers' top accolades, including me, for high net worth divorce in Chicago. So check us out. We're here for you. This show is meant to educate and entertain, and we don't want to be just another boring divorce podcast. We don't want to talk about child support and make you fall asleep talking about boring stuff. That's why we talk a little bit about fun things like celeb divorce, prenups, dating things. Then we do talk about some substantive information. And if this part doesn't interest you, you can skip ahead to the later timestamps to whatever you want to listen to. So, but people do ask us for this material, and we like educating as well. So we put our twist on it. Okay. So with that said, let's launch into the first question. This is for Rahul. These are real questions from our listeners. I was married over 25 years, so I get maintenance for life, in quotes. But what exactly does that mean? My STBX, that's our little term for soon to be X, is working now, and maintenance is calculated on that amount. But what about when he retires? Is maintenance recalculated? If so, based on what income number?
Great question, and happens quite a bit actually, and is often not talked about. So in Illinois, we have guidelines. So this is Illinois specific. So your mileage may vary in your state. Illinois has formulas for determining the amount of maintenance and also the length of maintenance. Let's presume, it has factors about whether maintenance is appropriate in your case, but let's presume for this conversation that maintenance is appropriate because it's already been awarded. So then you have formulas for the amount and the duration. For marriages that are over 20 years in length, the court can order what they call indefinite maintenance. I know the listener here has said, maintenance for life in quotations. That's maybe not, those are not the words from the statute or from the law, but it's really indefinite maintenance, which basically means the payor, meaning the person paying the maintenance, will pay maintenance until they can't or they retire, at which point they can ask the court by way of motion to reduce or otherwise modify and terminate their current maintenance obligation. So at that time, and they have to have a good faith retirement, meaning you can't retire the day after you get divorced, presuming you're not of retirement age. So it's got to be that. And so then the court will look at the income at that time, will look at money coming in from, various, if there's retirement, retirement cash flow, Social Security cash flow, any other investment cash flow. In Illinois, the courts have to look at income from quote unquote all sources. So they'll look at income from all sources and then see if there is a number to be had or if it goes to zero.
So let me ask you a follow-up, that kind of a scenario that would help people understand this a little bit. Mm-hmm. Let's assume two different cases. One is the guy, this is just a normal maintenance order, so we don't have a baked-in retirement age. Like sometimes in these judgments, we negotiate a settlement and we have like an agreed-upon age where the guy can or woman can retire. And if they do after that point, they don't have to prove that their retirement's reasonable. That's one of the things the statute basically says, is that they're not voluntarily underemployed or quitting too early, right? So what if in this case, the person, let's assume they retire at 65 and they really retire. There's no pension. They're just dipping into their 401k now and getting Social Security. Do you think that'd be a situation where the person retiring could get maintenance terminated?
I think so, presuming his Social Security retirement age actually is 65. The Social Security, I think, website publishes, it's 67-ish. So depending on where he falls or she falls at that time, this person, I would say you definitely have a bona fide argument that you could do it.
Yeah. And then like you mentioned before, the circumstances are important. Like if somebody has to retire due to an illness, if it's a good faith thing, the court may let you retire, quote unquote, early. We also run into a situation, Rahul, like the one thing we talk to clients about sometimes is they're healthy, they're older, they're like in their 60s, and there's really no indication the person's going to retire anytime soon. So in that case, does maintenance still end at 67 because that's the retirement age? How does it work in practice? If there's a maintenance order like this, does it just keep going until the guy actually retires and it's on them to terminate it?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, unless you've baked in a retirement age, which some judgments have you, like you said, and some don't.
Right.
You've got to keep paying until a judge tells you can stop. And the only way a judge can tell you, or your ex-spouse agrees, enough's enough, you can be done now. If you're in your mid-70s and you're powering forward, no intention of quitting, then you can't just say, okay, I'm over 65, so I'm going to stop paying maintenance. But if you decide, hey, I'm 78, I want to stop working now, I don't think a court's going to say you should just keep working. That's, I think, the key.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So let's move on. We've got another question here.
Yeah, so this one's for you, Rafe. So here's a question. Anyone know of a family law attorney who will take me on as a new client to modify a parenting plan to 50-50? Essentially, they're asking, hey, do I have a chance to make my current schedule into a 50-50 schedule? Also, can you help, or can someone help get orders for second opinions in doctors and child counseling respected in Illinois in this year or the early next year? I think they're asking about whether they can have a right to get a second opinion on perhaps treatment options or diagnoses or otherwise that has been rendered. They're saying this is including getting a 10-year-old's best interest and opinion heard to make father and his wife. So essentially, it sounds to me like this person is saying there's a lot of high conflict going on in this case where they feel like, in this case, the husband has either remarried or is in a new relationship. I guess it's a wife, so remarried, and they're in this situation, the person feels like they're being either alienated or removed from this child's life. Whether that's accurate or not, that's how they feel. They want to know what they can do about it. It sounds like they feel the sensation of losing control, losing the ability to, contribute to decision making, contribute towards, medical counseling issues. It looks like the child might have something going on as well, because it sounds like the child's in counseling and they have certain opinions that may or may not be expressed. So they want to know what they can do and what they can do in court. And they feel like they've had bad luck with it. So what should they do here?
This is some of the most difficult issues to deal with in divorce cases. And this sounds like it's post-decree because they're talking about modifying a parenting plan. One of the problems is oftentimes these questions lack a lot of detail. And in our private Facebook group, the Illinois Divorce Support Network, link will be in the show notes, but you can also search Illinois Divorce Support Network. By the way, this is all Illinois law, or our answers are Illinois related because that's where we're licensed. So this isn't legal advice, but we're giving our best shot at these questions to try to help in some way and help the audience. First of all, modifying to 50-50, I think they mean parenting time, not decision-making, but let's assume it's parenting time. You have to show best interest of the child to change parenting time in Illinois. And you'd have to show why. There's factors that the court takes into account. You just have to show the court why it would be better for the schedule to change from whatever it is now. And the problem is the person doesn't say what it is now or how recently it was entered. Did this person agree to some schedule 6 months ago and now he wants 50-50? Or was this last month? It's unclear. Assuming it's been a while, my answer is maybe you could modify, but what shows that it's best interest of the child to be with you half of the time? And there might be facts that show that, but we don't have a default 50-50 state, or we don't have a law that says that in Illinois, but I can tell you the trend is moving more in that direction. Courts are more willing to consider that. When I started doing this, that was science fiction, in the early 2000s, but now dads are getting much more parenting time up to 50-50. So I'd say it's possible, but you're going to have evidence showing why it would be in the best interest of the child. And that's not impossible to do. It's doable. Then it says, get orders for second opinions and doctors and child counseling respected. Well, again, we don't know the details. So I don't know what that means. And I don't know what the parenting judgment says about second opinions. A lot of parenting judgments provide for a second opinion, but then your remedy has to be to take the issue to a court and say, okay, if parent A wants the kid to get immunized or whatever the issue may be, or some kind of, let's say, optional surgery, and parent B says, I don't want that. Well, your remedy is you got to go to court and have the judge make a decision about that disagreement. If you're joint parents and you can't agree, that's your remedy, is going to file a petition. Then this thing, 9 to 10-year-old best interest and opinion heard. Isolation and entrapment. We don't know the details. This father, I think it's a father, has to prove, or no, I guess it's a mother. I can't quite tell. But claiming there's aggressive isolation and entrapment tactics, they're going to have to be able to prove that isolation and entrapment. A guardian ad litem would investigate all this, and maybe an expert witness to figure out what's going on here. And yeah, the opinion would be heard, but a young child's opinion is discounted pretty heavily because they're very young. Once they're teenagers, the court puts more stock in what they have to do. it says, I want to get this on track over misunderstanding, but it's not clear what the misunderstanding is. So what I often say in the Facebook group is, and I have a pinned post that explains, here's all the stuff you need to put in a question so we can give you a proper answer. I think the important thing to take away from this, though, is this is exceptionally difficult post-decree litigation to engage in and very, very expensive. And you need to be very clear-eyed about what your goals are and whether they're realistic before you embark on this kind of battle. You will spend tens of thousands of dollars fighting this battle, and you need to know what target are you trying to achieve and is it realistic, and get a couple opinions from different lawyers who are well-respected and know what they're doing before you engage in this kind of combat. They say conflict of interest or incompatible attorneys, probably true in the county they named. It's a rural county where there aren't a lot of divorce lawyers. So I wish them the best, but this is challenging. Finally, to close out the show, Rahul, we're going to talk about this. There's one dating app story we want to get to before we close out the show.
There's this article on Fortune that says dating apps are doomed because Gen Z is locked in on meet cutes. Former Hinge content lead says they want to vibe their way through meeting people. You know, that's the new thing, is like they want people to pass the vibe check, as they say. So Lana Dunn is a former Hinge content lead and host of the Seeing Other People podcast, believes dating apps are doomed because Gen Z has these preferences and for meet cutes and in-person connections, and that despite dating apps' efforts to evolve, you hear about it. We've talked about it on the show. They use AI. They use all kinds of other things to sort of put little twists on the concept. Dunn argues that unless they facilitate real-life interactions, they won't regain their former popularity. You know, sort of like one of those things where it's like Tinder, Hinge, Bumble. It's kind of like old news, and that's so Gen Z. Now Gen Alpha is on a different thing, or that's so millennial. It's whatever the case is, right? So she encourages using dating apps as a starting point, but emphasizes the importance of transitioning to in-person interactions to assess genuine chemistry. So again, it's the whole Taco Bell concept, right? All these articles kind of say the same thing, which is it's the same food that's being repackaged in different forms.
That's a great analogy, the Taco Bell concept. We got to remember that for future shows.
So that's what this is saying, essentially, is this like Gen Zers are burnt out. They want meetings, what do you say, Rafe? IRL. It's in real life. So more of the same, but it looks like dating apps are not going to make the comeback that they're hoping for, despite trying to leverage new technology, etc. And then we'll link the article. It's got, dating tips. And we may have somebody on this show, maybe in a month or so, to talk a little bit more about this.
Yeah, in December, we're going to tease this because it's cool. Blaine Anderson, datingbyblaine.com. She's going to be a guest on the show. When we have the exact date, we will let you know in advance. It's going to be huge because she's got a great following and she's really funny and interesting. And she is a dating coach for like high net worth people. And she has great stories about being a matchmaker and coaching people in their dating situations. And she posts on Twitter, on X, and she's really funny. I think she's going to be an awesome guest. I know she will. So that'll be worth checking out for sure. But yeah, it's so interesting because I think dating apps have a place in initially finding people, because it's just hard to go shopping, so to speak. Everybody's in their own lives, and you can at least figure out that there's X number of people around you that are interested in dating. But there's no substitute for meeting people in real life and getting the vibe check. It's that signal to noise ratio. The texting is just not a good way to communicate. And you don't know you like somebody till you are standing in front of them and you're talking to them. So it's there's really no surprise here that this is happening, because ultimately these are human relationships, and texting and some photographs just isn't enough. It's enough to get started, but it's like test driving a car. You see online that you like a car and you want to buy that car, but you're going to go over to the dealership to look at it. So you got to go meet people in real life. Otherwise you have no idea what you're getting into. And remember, gentlemen, texting is for logistics only. Okay. All right. With that said, have a great day, everybody. Thanks a lot for watching the show. We appreciate you. Take care.